Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The Major 5 qualifiers begin tomorrow, but big confirmations coming out last night with former OpTic head coach Rambo no longer a part of the organisation. Some believe this may be preceding iLLeY departing over the coming days as well. But what does this mean for OpTic Texas and also for Rambo himself? What's his next venture going to be in the CDL? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. First of all, I thought this is kind of funny here, right? Because FaZe designed their camera with the intention of making it look like diamonds, and here come Los Angeles Thieves with the diamond checker just to make sure that it's actually true, because some don't believe it necessarily is. This I thought was one of the best packs in Seattle, so I just thought the kind of, the signatures here were kind of nice. Look at Simp's signature, obviously got this professionally done, but it's very good going, I think. There's some other good ones as well, but this is one of my favourites for sure. Also, just on Jacob Hell, we mentioned yesterday morning that Los Angeles Guerrillas is a good chance that at least Team Falcons are interested in purchasing them. That's what JoeDeceives reckoned on stream on the flank a couple of days ago. Now, Jacob Hell corroborates the same thing and says, yes, I've also been told of Falcons' interest in acquiring the Los Angeles Guerrillas, but it's definitely not a certainty, and especially as Ben mentioned with the whole Microsoft Activision thing that they're still trying to do, that may not happen because of the UK CMA, but whatever, we'll see how that goes. Maybe Activision don't want to allow that to happen. Apparently, they also had interest in the Florida spot before, but whether Activision would allow this. So, an interesting question for sure, but yeah, confirmation that at least there is interest there for the Saudi Arabian organisation Falcons to acquire Los Angeles Guerrillas, effectively, is what they're trying to do here. Also, a quick update, which I thought was tragic as it is funny in a way, that so the ranked play beta, like Trek are literally carrying everything on their back, right? Infinity Ward again have said, oh yeah, can you do ranked play for Warzone? Like, because we don't know how to do it. So I think that's what's happening here with Lawrence Metten and co. But Clay's like, look, please, can we actually get some sort of anti-cheat here, right? Because if we don't have it, then it's not looking good right now. And the Warzone anti-cheat, if that was to be the case, isn't going to be looking good either. And they also confirmed that they made this new COD Esports account the other day for the World Series of Warzone and Challenges coming soon. So pretty much the first tweet they've done on this account related to anything competitive is a postponing of what's happening. So the World Series of Warzone Stage 1 qualifiers have been postponed. Don't exactly know why. The game probably is just an absolute mess, to be honest. Maybe the servers are broken again, I don't know. But not a particularly good start, it must be said, to the World Series of Warzone. So hopefully everything this weekend in the CDL goes pretty smoothly. Just wanted to mention also, speaking of Clay and the OpTic guys in a second, remarkable statement here from Clayster on stream last night that Huke was wanting to go to Vegas when he was initially dropped by Los Angeles Guerrillas, or was on his way out of the team. OpTic, after trying to get pred and failing to get pred, effectively resorted to Huke, but they knew that getting Huke was going to be okay because they have Shotzzy, who was there in the past. They, of course, iLLeY was around the team at the time, so it made sense what they're up to, and obviously Huke has been working very well with the OpTic camp. Now, let's not forget, right, at the time he was dropped by Los Angeles Guerrillas, many were questioning Huke's ability, and I think there was understandable reasons for that. Huke hadn't looked so good over the last couple of years, but in the right environment, Huke is very good. Now, according to Clayster, he came to Vegas and said, hey, do you want to bring me into the team or whatever, right? But Vegas Legion had just had a good result at Major 1. They came top 6. I guess this is when Clayster's saying it, and therefore they said, you know what, we did well, so we're going to stick with it, right? Stick with Prolute, stick with TJ, and maybe a decision they will regret.
Dude, kind of doesn't laugh at that, okay?
Bro, if only we didn't get top 6 first event.
Oh, no, he laughs.
Only if we didn't get top 12, bro. Kyler's like, yo, you guys need one on Legion?
Kyler.
We were like, nah, we got top 6, we're good, man.
Kyler, you know what's crazy, bro?
Guy joins OpTic.
We had 2 barrels on our sub and 2 fat stocks on our AR when we played.
Yo, Clay, you know who else?
Yeah, I know.
We set ourselves up, bro.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to hear that around about that time, so they just come top 6 during the first major in December, and then Los Angeles Guerrillas in early January parted ways with Huke, and I guess Huke at that point kind of knew that, well, he was going to be out of there looking for options, talked to Vegas because maybe he wants to play with Clay again, and Clay's like, you know what, I think we're good. We just came top 6, looking okay. Now, looking back on it, you can say, oh, obviously they should have dropped Prolute for Huke, and okay, maybe that was a sensible move, but and if that had have happened, OpTic wouldn't have been able to get him, right, because he was their backup for pred, and because he was unrestricted, they could just sign him last minute after the pred thing fell through. So, I mean, very interesting, right, how that would have changed the course of things. And would Huke on Vegas have elevated that team a lot higher? Maybe it would have done. Now, of course, they've got Standy out to that team instead, and it was working well online, but on LAN, most recently, it wasn't quite going to plan. So, I wonder how that could have changed the trajectory. But speaking of someone that Huke has a lot of experience with, Rambo Ray, former head coach for the Dallas Empire, of course, former legendary Call of Duty player for Envy and even OpTic back in the day, was part of the OpTic Texas team very recently, and a while ago now, a couple of months ago, back in January, there was all the drama that kicked off between Dashy and Rambo, and, well, we know how that ended, right? There was a choice that had to be made. Rambo obviously wasn't the biggest fan of Dashy's, I don't know if it's playstyle things or exactly what the clashes were there behind the scenes, but it's a long time even before this came to the surface that there was friction between the two of them, even last year as well. There was definitely parts of this, so it was going to boil over at some point. Indeed it did, and after Dashy got dropped from the team, and then Rambo and co gave their thoughts on that podcast as to why Dashy got benched and everything, and then all the drama went down. Dashy didn't want the narrative to go in the direction that they were maybe pushing it. He came back with his perspective on Dashy, or Rambo, sorry, dipping work for, chalking scrims, going bowling, and there was debate as to whether this was really true or not, or whether he was exacerbating how severe of a deal this actually was from the Rambo perspective, and others gave their thoughts on it. And eventually Hex said, you know what, we're not losing Dashy, he's a player for the future here, he's a star of the team, we're bringing him back. And whatever that means in terms of what happens to Rambo and what his future is in the team, don't care. Dashy's coming back in. So he made the call, the team made the call, and that meant that effectively for that to happen, Rambo would make way from that head coaching role, and JP, who obviously gets on with the guys, has stepped up into pretty much the primary coach, analyst, assistant coach. He's doing everything basically for that team, and there's an argument to say that Karma should come in as a consultant or something else like that. Karma being a full-time head coach, probably not going to work. The guys are going to get up on time for everything, and Hex wants him to, make sure that he actually commits, right? So that if he's going to do it, he takes it seriously, and maybe there's not the willingness for that to happen on both sides, but I still feel like Karma should be a valuable piece of that puzzle, given that he wants to help out in some respect. But he's not going to be the head coach, and Rambo is also not going to be the head coach. It was a bit strange, right, because Rambo stepped away into this kind of like content space, but it was weird in a way, because Rambo started this series of videos that he was doing on how to play Call of Duty, especially in the ranked play side, and then Methods, also on OpTic, came along and not exactly jacked that idea, but he came up with his ranked play for dummies thing. So Rambo, I'm sure, felt like, well, I don't really have a spot here, right? Because if I'm going to make a bit of content, Zinni's kind of doing that stuff, so where do I fit in? And I'm sure Rambo doesn't necessarily want to be that content guy for OpTic for a long term, because he's no longer a part of their competitive teams. That's what Rambo is up to, and it's also interesting, just as we mentioned this, that OpTic Rambo still has OpTic in his name. He's still connected to OpTic in the affiliate thing on Twitter, but it was confirmed last night by OpTic Texas, from bringing home a championship to the Green Wall and helping establish success of the team over the past few seasons. Thanks, Rambo, for representing OpTic in the best way. Best of luck with what is next, and off he goes. Thank you, Rambo. So, yeah, pretty remarkable, right? I think this has been coming for some time. It's probably expected that this would happen, but also Rambo hasn't tweeted about this, so I'm a little bit confused as to what Rambo's perspective on it is. And I'd be very surprised if Rambo doesn't feel somewhat screwed over in this situation, right? Like, he was the head coach for some time, he was effectively forced out of the role, and he could argue whether that's fair or unfair, but it's happened in other esports and sports for sure, where similar things happen, and now he's been released entirely by the organization. So what does this mean for OpTic? I don't really think it's going to change anything for them on the day-to-day perspective. JP's still going to be there. Rambo's not been connected to the team in that way for quite some time, but also Rambo's future, right? Where's he going to go next? Because I'd be very surprised if he doesn't go to potentially another coaching position. I must say this tweet from CDL is very funny, right? Dashy right now, like kind of the rest in peace bozo type feeling maybe, and I was maybe hoping that Dashy would come out with some sort of tweet about this. I'm sure he wouldn't do, but I was still thinking, like, if he comes out with a tweet like this, like the See Your Cold War tweet from back in 2020, right? If he came with something like that, I would just be cracking up. But it didn't happen, so maybe they've resolved something behind the scenes, but I'm sure they still don't perfectly get on, but whatever. OpTic chose Dashy over Rambo, and now we're seeing the full ramifications of that. Now, the question is for me, where's Rambo going to go next? During the Dallas Empire days, he was given a lot of credit, right? There's a few names that get thrown around, oh, he's the GOAT or whatever, right? The greatest coach of all time type thing. They always throw this around. Crowder always got a lot of credit. Rambo always got a lot of credit, largely because their teams were winning, right? So people didn't really know, like, is this coach good or is he not good? Like, we don't know, but if the team's winning, then he must be good. That was basically the argument that was had. Nowadays, there's maybe a little bit more nuance to the situation. And how good is Rambo as a coach, it's somewhat difficult to say, but I think he was a valuable piece of that Dallas Empire team. What he brought to the table from that kind of, leadership, but also mindset perspective, I think was critical for that team at times. Got on very well with Krim and Clay and all this type of stuff. So where's he going to go next? Is he going to, because even a while ago, he was working with Sledgehammer Games. I think during the Advanced Warfare days, he was working kind of like how Aix does Rex Defiant on those games. So maybe he won't even stay around the CDL from that sense and will go into a different role. But I could understand if he turned into a general manager or just a new head coach to a different team, because I would not be surprised at all if some teams that haven't been performing, such as the Minnesota Rokkr, look to make changes in their coaching department going forwards. And this tweet is also a little bit interesting just because the tweet from OpTic Texas, if we go back to it here, says, best of luck with what's next. Don't know if that implies that there's something lined up for Rambo that he's going into now, and therefore maybe it was a mutual thing for them to release him so that he could step into another role very shortly, or whether that's just a general feeling from the OpTic Texas social media guys. But you'd feel like it wouldn't be a surprise if many of these teams are hitting up Rambo, because yes, it didn't work out with OpTic, the Dashy circumstances, it wasn't going to happen, and they chose Dashy over Rambo. Fair enough, given what Dashy is going to be for the future of that team. Hex is at least hoping, but does that mean that Rambo's a bad coach or couldn't work with certain group of players? I don't necessarily think so. The other guys seem to get on fine with Rambo and probably felt like he was valuable, but Dashy, obviously, it wasn't going to quite work out on that sense. So yeah, where does Rambo go next in Treaty? Your thoughts? Does he go and join another team as a head coach, a general manager? And also, what does that mean for, potential, if Rambo plays OpTic in the future on a different team? Would be pretty interesting just to see how that goes. The other part of this to mention, though, is the iLLeY piece, right? Because with Rambo going, that raises the question as to whether iLLeY's going as well. I know there's been many questions over the last few days. Who is the substitute for OpTic? Because initially, Scump was their sub. I'm pretty sure that was the case. But then when iLLeY was dropped, it was like, well, iLLeY, I guess, is the sub because he actually has played this year, or at least more recently than Scump has, and Scump's doing the content, so you would have thought iLLeY would be the sub. But the last two events, Scump has been there, but iLLeY hasn't. So if there's an official sub, it can't be iLLeY right now because he would have been at those events, because he'd have to be, because that's what the sub has to do. OpTic, Scump has been there because he's been doing the watch parties, so it could be him. But also apparently people haven't noted him going up and doing the whatever he has to do to sign off as being a sub, so they might have JP there doing it instead. Bit confusing, but basically as a result, the rumor has it that iLLeY's contract has either been terminated or it will do in the very near future, either at the end of the season or already. So with Rambo getting released, does raise the question as to whether the same is going to happen for iLLeY soon, especially because there's basically nothing OpTic related in iLLeY's bio or anything anymore. Okay, the header is OpTic branded, but it's not really there, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the near future either. So definitely tweet your thoughts in the comment section below. What does this mean for OpTic? Will they now, with Rambo Released, bring Karma in on a more serious short-term basis? What does it mean for the future of Rambo as well? But it just closes the loop, I suppose, and all the drama over that OpTic camp over the last few months. Just to mention before we close out here, these are the biggest drop-offs of players of Major 3 to Major 4. Beans, Nasty, Exceed, and Hicksy make the top 4 in this one. And the other way around, we've got 3 of 4 players from the Los Angeles Thieves. No real surprise. But yeah, Drazah, his Search and Destroy KD well over doubled from Major 3 to Major 4. Like, how crazy is that? I know that Drazah went from playing a lot of Chals in ranked play to playing a lot of 8s and stuff in Search and Destroy, and that seemed to help him an awful lot in that game mode. Cammy also makes the list as well. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
The most cringe thing I've ever done in my life. This was the most cringe thing I have ever done in the history of competing in Call of Duty. Ever. I've competed for 15 years. I've competed for 18 years. This was the most cringe thing I have ever had to do in my entire life. Literally ever.
On the other, OpTic, it is time
this is horrible.
Right into it. First off, we'll be introducing
that dude.
For your OpTic Texas, let's take a look. When we get right into this one.